Actually, I'm coming from fine arts. I was starting, or I was drawing from my youth on, like, so it was like at the same time I was producing music, and the sound sculptures as an idea of an object came through a process of drawing and making music, and this turned into this turned into kind of a very specific idea of an object, and from there I've built a whole series, the mobile boosters called, and but this is just one part of my work, because I'm still working on in very different media, so that can be collage or drawings or videos. For example, at the moment I am curating a show in collaboration with the Museum Martha Herford in Germany about mobile sound systems. So I'm actually trying to show a whole discourse around mobile sound systems, and also worldwide phenomena of mobile sound systems, like Jamaican sound systems, or sound system culture in India, or the mic man on Trinidad Tobago, or kids in Queens that pimp their BMX bicycles, and their parents actually come from Trinidad Tobago, so there's probably a connection from this scene in Trinidad, and the people on Trinidad that do these sound system cars, they are coming from India, so there's a connection between Indian music and the mic man in Trinidad Tobago. So I'm trying to show these things together, and also or with a focus on contemporary art, and where artists were making reference to these phenomena. I've built a whole series of mobile sound sculptures, but also every sculpture has its very specific aspect. Like one, for example, is dealing with low frequencies, where you have a composition playing on the object, which looks like a three-wheeler, or it is a three-wheeler, but it looks like a absurd, like it's very small in the back, and it has very huge front tires. So actually, its physiognomy looks like a pit bull or something. And in the spot where the engine would be is a low frequency subwoofer, and it plays frequencies from 30 hertz to 200 hertz, so that you in the very low frequencies you actually don't even hear the sound. You more recognize it by your stomach or by your organs, and then also you have reflections from the walls. So you have like low frequency reflections coming from the corners of the room, and then when the frequency rises, then you can localize it in the actual object. That is because if the amplitude is very long, and longer than the distance between your ears, you can't localize the sound. That's why we hear sub-frequencies mono and never stereo. It's because of the length of the amplitude. Then another work deals with high tones. So there's a composition playing onto cone, cones. Is it called cones? Like half balls, and is producing a spherical wave, so that you have a very three-dimensional acoustic, and it sounds almost like the sound goes in your brain. So it's like acupuncture in a very high frequency, where our hearing also is very sensitive, so that it actually sounds quite dangerous, because it's not very loud, so it's not painful, but your senses are very stimulated in this frequency. So, and lots of other objects that deal with has different references. or actually, when I do work, mostly after finishing the work, I recognize that I have seen something that was using the same strategy. Like, for example, I was building the first mobile sound sculpture called the Mobile Booster. It was kind of a green thing that looks like half a car, or a car that is turned inside out, like a tuner car with a sound system that is kind of turned inside out or something. And I recognized that the idea was coming from pimped cars that were always meeting in front of my house, so that all the low frequencies were coming inside my apartment. And so it was like a sonic assault, and I was starting to produce soundscapes to kind of overlap the sound that was coming from outside, and then from there I was building this sculpture. And so I was thinking about the influence that sound has on you psychologically and physically, and then I was doing more research about how sound actually is used, and I found out about sonic warfare and psychological warfare, where sound is quite an important aspect for it. Like, for example, in the Second World War, it was used to project. So they turned tanks into sound tanks to project virtual troops or panzer divisions in the kind of playing a soundtrack to the enemy, so that the enemy thinks there is a big division coming, and then actually it's just for irritating. And then later on, it was used in the Vietnam War to frighten the Vietnamese, and make it very short because I want to come to the weapons that are used nowadays, which are the LRADs. Yeah, it's actually the LRAD is called long range acoustic device. It's a loudspeaker that is using kind of a combination of ultrasonic waves and sound waves, and so the sound is very pointed and has a decibel, or they can reach a volume of 100 or more than 160 decibel, and they are used instead of water guns, for example. So like one of the most popular non-lethal weapons that the police is nowadays using against demonstrations, or to end demonstrations. So yeah, and so if there was one very interesting thing that I found out about the demonstrations in New York from the Occupy demonstration in the Wall Street, where the people were not allowed to use electronic equipment anymore to amplify their speeches, and also no equipment to amplify music or anything. So that was where the powers already were taking these instruments away from the people and then using sound guns to disrupt. Is it called disrupt? To disrupt the crowd. And for me, that was an extreme example of kind of the kind of speechlessness of the system, where they actually produce kind of an extreme asymmetric constellation of the use of equipment in very specific moments. And what I find really interesting is that that's something that is really difficult to see. I mean, of course, the LRED, you hear it's a very loud noise, or it's a sinus tone in the range of 3,000 hertz, where it's very painful for our hearing. And so if you hear it, you just run away. Yeah, so it's like so it's just painful. And but what I mean is, it needs quite a while to think about how sound affects your psychology, or affects your behavior, or society, because it's so immaterial and it's so abstract. No, I think for me, actually, I would, for example, not think about me as a conceptual artist, so I wouldn't think it's a work that has a clear formulated critique. It's more an analytic way of working. It's like recognizing things, having a rough idea of something that is weird, something that kind of irritates me. Mostly I actually don't really know what it is, and then when I build the work, then I recognize what the influences were. For example, in terms of the Panzer, the sound Panzer, it's like I start to think about my hometown, where was one of the biggest American tank factories, and when I was a child, for me it was just kind of a normal circumstance because of the post-war situation of Germany. And I mean, that was in the 80s, so it was like post-war, but the Americans in the Rhine-Main area where I grew up were very present there, and that was just normal. But there was all this heavy war machinery directly in front of our door. So I think these kind of impressions were they kind of are mirrored in the work, and there was another thing where I recognized that the presence of the Americans in this area were also bringing certain kind of music with them, or the radio station was there where we listened to American radio. And that was influencing our whole kind of our understanding of music, or what we knew. You know, we listened to a certain kind of music through that, yeah? And then I think all these, and then you recognize later in other parts of Germany there were totally different influences. The actual track vehicle, the tracks and the hydraulic, was an old mini dumper. It was a Japanese mini dumper I've bought on eBay, and then I cut all kind of pieces off and started to rebuild the surface and of course the whole sound system, and that is quite a lot of different types of work. It's like metal works and fiberglass and wood, and the actual construction of the speakers. The sculptures are not all mobile. They are actually most of the sound sculptures are mobile sound objects, but the sound Panzer is the only sculpture that I'm regularly performing with. There was another one, the mobile booster, that I was using for performances, but I think just 1 or 2 times or something. I was building other objects, and the Panzer is actually the real deal in using it as a cultural weapon to perform and to bring it to different places, and the Panzer actually develops through the performance its own ecology. And this works specifically with the Panzer. The other works, like Tweeter, for example, has its soundtrack, and it's a hanging object, so if it's installed, it's like that. sound I play on the Panzers, usually what my own music, the music I produce, and but I also mix it with. There are two types of performance. One is a live act with my music, and in combination with video projections, and the other performance in more public space. Also, that I use the DJ on it, so I play songs mostly that are conceptually related to the principle of the Panzer. So, for example, I use tracks that I use in pimped cars to show how the subwoofers, to show the black holes. The photograph is actually made from models that I use to build the speakers for the Panzer. So it's kind of real size volume models. I built these kind of boxes from where I could see how much air volume I actually need to build the speakers. And then I was designing the shape by using real size boxes that I could cut off and change the shaping, and had a rough idea of the volume that the loudspeaker box is gonna have in the end. So because the Panzer has separated air chambers in its body, so the subwoofers has the single box with bass with low frequency or bass reflex horns, and the midtones are separated and have their single volumes. Yesterday I was playing some instrumentals from Little John, because this is like, if you look on YouTube or somewhere where people are presenting their cars with big subwoofers, they play just like instrumentals from this kind of South Coast hip hop music, because it has these bass lines that go from very low, like 35 hertz, and then go upper, so you have like these very clear frequencies. And this music actually is produced for these cars, so it's like these are things I'm then also using in the performance. So I was playing I'm Born to Roll by Master Ace, because it's kind of, you know, these are things I bring in then. But my own music is more it's mostly really it's more abstract, like building a soundscape, and I do this since years actually, that I produce also a soundscape in which I start to draw or work, and it was kind of a parallel practice, that I was kind of making music and using samples and transforming kind of bits of music into something else, into kind of a soundscape, and in which I was able to work as a sculptor or was doing the drawings. And then after a while it came together that I was building the machine with which I was producing the soundscape in which I was building a machine.